the center of our love I stand, and from that center I, the soul, will outward move. From that center I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group and throughout the world. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group and
Good evening, everyone. This is Michael here from the Temple of Silence in the Helsinki area of Finland. And I'd like to welcome you to our Attracting Financial Resources for the work of the hierarchy, especially for the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ. The most important planetary project that is presently in process. We have perhaps no idea how necessary it is that the great Lord, the head of the hierarchy of the Christ, the Lord Maitreya, be with us to help guide us safely into the age of Aquarius. Energy is neutral, and there could be such a thing as entering incorrectly into that great age. And this would be a great downfall for humanity. Well, we're working on the book, The Problems of Humanity, and we're in that chapter which has a lot to do with financial resources, with capital and labor. And I just want to bring that up there and maybe switch over to some reading that will be hopefully stimulating. You know, this was written some 70 years ago, and you would think, well, maybe much of it is outmoded, but in fact so many things remain as they were and have in fact worsened in their condition, because now we truly do have what DK warned against at the time. He said, well, selfish individuals you will have, and maybe always have for some time, just as the rich and the poor, they will always be with you, said the Christ. But to have the powerful selfish groups, this is maybe something newer and difficult to combat, as they can so easily buy government and buy the social process and turn it all to their particular group advantage. So we have to help to change these selfish groups so that their motive becomes something different, something higher, and they begin to realize what they can do for the elevation of humanity. We had gotten this far. We were talking about the capitalistic system and the capitalists per se. One sentence I'll probably never forget is that capitalism has emerged and wrecked the world. Whoa, that is such a uncompromising statement, so difficult, and yet just as the selfish individual strives for his own advantage, so does the selfish group with selfish individuals participating for their own advantage. So just a little segue here. DK says, it might be well to add here that the selfish thinking and the separative motivation which distinguishes the capitalistic system is also to be found in the small and unimportant businessman, in the corner grocery, the plumber, the haberdasher, who exploits his employees and deceives his customers. It is the universal spirit of selfishness, identification with the personality and unawareness of the soul, and the love of power with which we have to contend. Power not so much on behalf of others, but over others. The war, the just concluded war, the Second World War, has, however, acted like a purge. As a matter of fact, he considers the war from 1914 to 1945. Now that's, 31 years. The war has, however, acted as a purge. It has opened the eyes of men to the underlying causes of war: economic distress based on the exploitation of the planet's resources by an international group of selfish and ambitious men. I want to say, humanity in its monadic nature is ruled very much by the sign Scorpio, the light of day and the Buddhic plane. However, there is in Scorpio the dweller on the threshold, very pronounced, and the will to, as it were, corner the market and to possess those things which humanity may need, and to charge exorbitantly far beyond what is necessary for the distribution of these things, the so-called things by which men live. Anyway, the opportunity to change things is now present. So if we were to go on a little bit, we enter that other field in this dichotomy, the opposing group, labor. A powerful group representing the capitalistic system, both national and international, and an equally powerful group of labor unions and their leaders face each other today. Now, so much has been done recently to weaken the labor unions. It is true that in some sense they became selfish, and some of those in hierarchy who were sponsoring their emergence and flourishing had to pull back their energy because of the drift towards selfishness in some of these unions, but nevertheless they did at least guarantee a livable salary and reasonable working conditions for so many millions. Anyway, at that time that this book is being written, they faced each other, and they still do, with labor, I think, much weakened, but looking to re-emerge. Both groups are national and international in scope. It remains to be seen which of the two will eventually control the planet, or if a third group made up of practical idealists may not emerge and take over. I guess DK seems to be pointing in that direction, just the way he would like to see the emergence of a third party related to the new group of world servers, and to end this fractious and unproductive polarization going on. The interest of the spiritual workers in the world today is not on the side of the capitalists, nor even of labor, although he seems to hint here that it would be more spiritual were it on the side of labor. Not even on the side of labor as it is now functioning. It is on the side of humanity, and that, just think about that for a minute, you know. In my country, in the USA, well, it's not any cut and dried situation, but the Republican Party tends to represent the capitalistic system, and the Democratic Party more the approach of labor and the ascendancy of so many people who are not the owners. But somewhere in between the two is humanity, and for the benefit of all human beings, a new way of dealing has to emerge. For thousands of years, if history is to be believed, the wealthy landowners, the institutional heads of tribes, the feudal lords, the slave owners, merchants, or business executives have been in power. You know, you go to some other countries, this is still very much the case. And land reform, for instance, is a deadly business, you know. There are the owners and there are the people who seek for change, and if they are very effective, their life is in danger. They exploited the poor. They searched for the maximum output at the minimum cost. Now that's hardly in favor of the welfare of humanity, of the workers that may work for you if you are a leader or own property or capital. you're not thinking of them, you're thinking only of that which might accrue to your account, and it's simply a symbol. You're choosing the symbol, the concretized energy, over the welfare of so many people who have hardly enough, or maybe not at all enough. When you look at some of the terrible devastation, 70,000 people in the Bahamas without homes. Look at what the homes were, and look at the splinters they are now. It's shocking. It's heartbreaking. The very poorest are having their means of livelihood taken away from them, and they are threatened. And some aid will come. Will it be enough? Well, it'll be a very, very long recovery. It could be faster and more efficient if those who own the wealth cared more. It is no new story, says the Tibetan. In the Middle Ages, the exploited workmen, the skilled craftsmen, and cathedral builders began to form guilds and lodges for mutual protection, for joint discussion, and frequently to promote the finest type of craftsmanship. So this was definitely a move towards group consciousness to be developed more fully now in the coming Aquarian age. These groups grew in power as the centuries slipped by, yet the position of the employed man, woman, or child remained deplorable. Maybe you've read some of those books about the ghastly conditions for the workers in the earlier part of the Industrial Revolution. I know when I was a student I read The Jungle by Upton Sinclair about the horrors of the meatpacking industry at the time, and that was just one example of the survival of the fittest, social Darwinism, and just extract all you can from the worker so that his life is impoverished and yours is enriched. With the invention of machinery, says the Tibetan, and the inauguration of the machine age during the 18th and 19th centuries, the condition of the laboring elements of the population became acutely bad. Living conditions were abominable, unsanitary, and dangerous to health, owing to the growth of urban areas around factories. They still are, as witness the housing problems of munitions workers during the past several years, and the situation around the coal fields, both of the states and Great Britain. Somehow many very wealthy owners have convinced themselves that this social Darwinism is just the way society works. It's the way our planet works. But of course, when there's real cooperation, it's far better for everybody. But the luxury would then be curtailed. Maybe this is not as bad as it was in Atlantis. We're told that unimaginable heights of luxury were reached there, and we can hardly imagine. Maybe the legends of the streets paved with gold come from some of those eras. The exploitation of children increased, the child labor, and it's still going on in many countries. The sweatshop flourished. The women are mostly in the sweatshop. They're driven mercilessly to produce more and more, faster and faster. Modern capitalism came into its own, and the sharp distinction between the very poor and the very rich became the outstanding characteristic of the Victorian era, supposedly an era of peace, the Pax Victoriana, but okay. Very brutal conditions for the very poor. I'm remembering back a few years that I think it was Bangladesh, and the people who were in the garment industry, many, many women, they went into a building that was showing signs of stress, and the whole thing collapsed while they were at work, killing hundreds. Some, for various reasons were saved. They couldn't go to work that day, or they had a premonition or something. But the condition of the buildings was known. Still, the attempt to eke out every last bit of blood, sweat, and tears, was there, and the welfare of the workers, not at all. From the angle of the planned evolutionary and spiritual development of the human family, leading to civilized and cultural living and to fair play and equal opportunity for all, the situation could not have been worse. Commercial selfishness and wild discontent flourished. You could see the revolutions coming in Russia and elsewhere. The very rich flaunted their superior status in the faces of the very poor, paralleled with a patronizing paternalism. The spirit of revolution grew among the herded, overworked masses, who by their efforts contributed to the wealth of the rich classes. Excuse me. Just a little more. The spiritual principle of freedom became increasingly recognized, and its expression demanded. World conditions tended in the same direction. Movements of every kind became possible, symbolizing this growth and the demand for freedom. The machine age was succeeded by the age of transportation, of electricity, of railroads, the automobile, the airplane. The age of communication paralleled this also, giving us the telegraph, telephone, the radio, and today the television, the radar, and look how it's expanded, of course. We have tremendous intercommunication in a global sense now. All these merged into the present age of science, which has given us the liberation of atomic energy and the potentialities inherent in the discovery, let's say not yet rightly used in the way that the Tibetan predicts, that the efforts of the fifth ray ashram, which has given us these possibilities, will liberate human beings for a more satisfying life in which leisure can be used for self-development. In spite of the fact that a machine can do the work of many men, which greatly contributed to the wealth of the man with capital, fresh industries and the growth of worldwide means of distribution provided new fields of employment, and the demands of the most materialistic period the world has ever seen gave a great impetus to capital and provided jobs for countless millions. Educational facilities also grew, and with this came the demand by the laboring classes for better living conditions, higher pay, and more leisure. Well, that's coming, and it's going to be, we're told, largely the gift of the fifth ray ashram. This the employers have constantly fought. And apparently, as DK has said, people all over the world in this class, they know each other, they understand each other, and they attempt to hold down the education and the betterment of those in the less advantaged classes, what he calls here the laboring classes. This the employers have constantly fought. They organized themselves against the demands of the awakening mass of men and precipitated a condition which forced labor to take action. So, we see this question of fairness arising. I mean, after all, the way the world is organized, it's something of a meritocracy, or at least it's intended to be, but not to deny human beings the needed things by which they must live. Always, as the Christ said, the rich and the poor you will always have with you, but me only for a short time, he basically said. And there is an incentive there when one sees what education and skill can bring for those who have less of those desirable conditions to raise themselves. Okay, that's all right. I mean, not everybody is the philosopher king yet, but the needs of people have to be met. And when I, look at some of these countries and I just see basic needs just not being met at all, it's sad indeed, and something has to be done about it. So next time, beginning on, let's see where we are here in our calendar, and we'll begin on the 15th. Beginning on the 15th of September, we'll continue this story of capital and labor. Just imagine that the crux of the whole possibility of the hierarchy and the Christ reappearing is a financial issue. It's astonishing. Maybe some people with a fevered imagination imagine that the Christ will appear through the clouds and on that white horse and put down all those who are against the spiritual way of life, and I might say against their own, or at least following a different religion than their own. But no, that's not reality. So we can definitely help. We make sacrifices. We contribute to those groups that are expressing what we consider to be important for the upliftment of humanity. It's all part of the factor of renunciation. We move towards the fourth initiation, the great renunciation, but as DK says, that is really built upon the lesser renunciations as we go along. And if we don't learn how to renounce in the smaller sense, then we will not be ready for that opportunity which brings liberation into the world of the monad, the world of the spirit. So we're being tested all the time, and the very first test is related to the first law of the soul, which is the law of sacrifice. I would recommend that you study the laws of the soul, because they do tell the story of what all of us have to conform to as we progress along the disciplic and initiatory path. So let's now thank Master DK for, what a teacher. And what a messenger, for the great ones. And he says, okay, I consider myself one of the humblest of the friends of the Christ. It's a specific kind of function, mostly for those who are on the wisdom or the mental line of the second ray. Interesting. And he's really trying to inform the Western mind about the truths of the ageless wisdom. So let's realize a few things. The truth of these things, because they are correlated with law. To those who give shall be given, so that they can give again. It's a law. And finally, for the masters and higher beings, to those who give all shall be given. So we ponder the world's situation here. If money is one of the most important things needed today for spiritual work, what is it? What is the factor which is at present deflecting it away from the work of the hierarchy, which is basically the work of uplifting humanity? Sometimes I wonder how much could be accomplished if people just knew something about the constitution of the human being, of which we theosophical types have so many maps, and their next real spiritual step ahead. Those two things have to be known. And then we would not fall victim to the materialism, the mistaken identity, the superficial perception, which makes us think that we are that material thing which is our instrument instead of the true consciousness. What is my personal attitude towards money? Do I regard it as a great and possible spiritual asset, or do I think of it in material terms? What is my personal responsibility in regard to money which passes through my hands? Am I handling money? Am I handling it as a disciple of the masters should handle it? We all fight the Hydra. The 9 parts of the dweller on the threshold, which has to be converted into the soul-infused personality, the right use of resources for the betterment of humanity along the ashramic lines, but maybe there's something in this great glamour of addiction to money and what money can buy materially. Maybe there's something that applies to us. So can we be like Hercules and grasp that head of the Hydra and make sure that our attitude towards the financial wealth, resources of the world is proper and really directed towards one of the ashramic lines of human betterment. Most ways of bettering humanity can be found under one of the 7. But so many people are under this glamour, I don't think it's a glamour to wish that you had enough to help your family, those close to you. I don't think so. But when there is excess, and when there is always yearning for the material things, which are really, they're not real, they're actual, but they're not real, then we have not defeated materialism. So we have some work to do, I think. But we can visualize money in the world today as it is spent largely for the satisfaction of personal material personality needs. All under the spell of materialism. The tremendous luxury in which some manage to live with far too much for their own good, withholding from others. And we can also imagine this being overcome, so that the Christ and His forces, His energies, attract out of the darkness of form addiction this flowing golden substance, so that symbolically it enters the hands of the Christ and His Chohans and masters and the initiates and disciples and those who basically care about humanity. We can see the flow coming out of the darkness into the hands of those who want to dispense this symbol, this flowing golden substance, in the right way, to make progress for everybody. There's no human being born on this planet who should not at least have that fair chance of having basic needs met. Even those who have sinned in the past and so forth, I guess we all have, but maybe they can do better if those needs can be met. And so the Christ and his energies, his forces, need this symbol to help humanity convert its way of life, so materialistic at present, into something much more values-based, based on spiritual values. And here is an ancient prayer relating us to the planetary logos as we as a group reach out so that the third aspect of divinity can be used under the guidance of the love wisdom of the second aspect. And we'll say it together. O Thou, in whom we live and move and have our being, the power that can make all things new, turn to spiritual purposes the money in the world. Touch the hearts of men everywhere, so that they may give to the work of the hierarchy that which has hitherto been given to material satisfaction. The new group of world servers needs money in large quantities. I ask that the needed vast sums be made available and may this potent energy of thine be in the hands of the forces of light. This is a problem, you know. It must be solved so that money can be used wisely, and then of course there will be enough for all and the needs will be met. There will still be many incentives, of course, because money cannot fulfill everything, but at least it gives a basis, a plateau from which one can strive towards psychological, mental, spiritual fulfillment. And it's just fair, you know. Fortunately, this is the age of Aquarius, with Libra so strong, and Gemini. And Libra, one of those signs on the third ray which really deals with the right balanced distribution of the financial resources in the world. And we have to want this for the advantage of all. It will cure so many psychological ills and frictions in society, hatreds, envies, all that. And we say, He for whom the whole world waits has said that whatsoever shall be asked in His name, with faith in the response, will see it accomplished. Our divisions in humanity can be overcome, and the right use of the financial resources of the world will help in the overcoming. And egotism will fall down. It's a huge glamour illusion. It will fall down. And so we think about those groups, those projects which attract us, which we think are offering something valuable for humanity. Every ashram really is sponsoring a number of these projects, these approaches to bringing the quality of that ashram to humanity in a better way. And you can think of the objective of each of the 7 ashrams, all of which will be manifesting during the Aquarian Age, and how they can deliver their quality to humanity for its uplift through the right use of the financial resources. Now, so many of us are involved with the second ray, not exclusively, of course, but it's education, isn't it? And social welfare. It's better health. It's the light and the love through psychological understanding. Every ashram has its particular qualities, and according to your soul ray, and then later, even your monadic ray, your contribution and that of the groups with whom you find yourself affiliated according to those rays, so will the gifts of your nature flow out. And so we say, I ask the needed money for, and we name it, what we're trying to support. Maybe it tells us something that Master Decay is not only this brilliant educator, but he's behind the Red Cross, which I suppose through one of his high disciples, Clara Barton, has brought relief to millions in dire circumstances. So I ask the needed money for, and can demand it because from the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Well, friends, I want to thank you for attending. And, you know, the world is changed by creative minorities. You kind of look at what Olcott and Blavatsky did together. You look at what Besant and Leadbeater did together. Just a small team. And they were able really to affect the world in a very positive way, and this is going on everywhere. So little groups like ours, we persist, we follow the instructions, we use the meditations and the meditative ideas offered by Master Decay, and we do persist. We do persist. That's the thing about the second ray. It works without let-up and leeway, relentlessly. Might surprise us, but that's what he says about how the great second ray of our solar system, the major ray, the indigo ray, how it works. So no matter what our ray, we're all under this second ray soul and personality of the solar logos, and probably eventually the second ray monad operating, a real heart center. And so, with good intention and with backing up our words with deeds, thinking of the omnipresent Lord Maitreya, a high initiate of the 7th degree, we say, we have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. And wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, there he will be. Such is his power of pervasion, and such is the spirit of relationship, of which he is a great exponent. So we make our plans, how we will help, and we offer to the work of Lord Maitreya and the hierarchy and the work of the divine plan that which we might be spending on more self-satisfying things, more spiritual things. Sometimes DK says, look, you have to give, and you have to give until it hurts. Goodness, how many of us live up to that? And we support the world together. And we spread love in our surroundings. Love and money, they must go together. The great second aspect and third aspect united, that's one of our big tasks. Now I just want to let you know that in another hour and a half or so, to you will be offering the Birth of Mary meditation. Mary is a symbol for the earth, and her discipleship is a symbol of the discipleship of humanity and the upraising of the earth until it can be crowned by the second aspect, just as she has the reputation of being crowned in the ascension at her death, celebrated in Leo. So born in Virgo and ascending in Leo to receive the crown from the second aspect. So anybody can attend if you like. It's mostly, well, you know, the Blue Rose group, but you're very welcome, and it's at this particular link. In another hour and a half. It's a meditation. It won't go on a long time. But we like to, symbolically celebrate that day. We're all disciples here, trying to be better disciples all the time. And she set an amazingly acquiescent example, accepting that burden, and giving birth then to the Master Jesus, or the Initiate Jesus, that made the appearance of the great teacher, the Christ, possible in the Palestinian era 2,000 years earlier. So there's so many different ways to help. Let's find our ways. So that humanity can be gathered together at the feet of the Christ. And I'm going to play in closing the Gayatri, O thou who givest sustenance to the universe, from whom all things proceed, to whom all things return, unveil to us the face of the true spiritual sun, hidden by a disk of golden light, that we may know the truth and do our whole duty as we journey to thy sacred feet.